If you look at a map of the United Kingdom, you'll find the County Cornwall way down in the lower left-hand corner, sticking out into the Atlantic Ocean just above the English Channel. Famous for its rocky beaches, it was best known a couple of centuries ago for its pirates. And the way they talk in Cornwall is exactly how you imagine pirates would sound. "Aye, matey, hoist the sails. We're going after the gold doubloons." Well, John Roe Moyle wasn't a pirate, but he was cut from that same rough character. He was a stonemason who specialized in carving granite. He was one of the early British converts to the church and came to Utah in 1856 with the very first handcart company. He came to build a dream he had longed for all his life, a Zion society where peace, harmony, and abundance would prevail. John thought the way to demonstrate his devotion to that ideal was to push his handcart all the way to Zion alone. When anyone offered to help, he'd say, "No thanks, I can do it myself." And he did. But that determination, the miles and obstacles and sheer difficulty, nearly wore him down to skin and bones. Upon his arrival in Salt Lake City, bystanders gasped in disbelief as he passed by. Like all new arrivals, he was given some land. His was in Alpine, about 22 miles south of Salt Lake City, and he recovered just fine. But after a time as a farmer, he was called to be a stonemason on the Salt Lake Temple. He was excited to build Zion, using his skills as a master mason. But John only owned one horse, which was needed on the farm every day. "It won't be a problem," he assured his leaders. "I'll get up before 2 a.m. every Monday, and at 4 miles per hour, I can walk the 22 miles in 6 hours and up and over the South Mountain and on to Salt Lake to report for my shift at 8 a.m. I'll stay the week with my oldest son who lives nearby, and then on Friday at 6 p.m. when my shift ends, I'll walk the 22 miles back home." All day Saturday, he worked as hard as he could to make up for his absence during the week. Sunday was his day of rest, and Monday he started it all over again. For several years, this was his schedule, until one Saturday morning, as he was milking the cow, she got agitated and kicked her right front hoof back, smashing John's right leg into an open compound fracture. Back then, the only way they had to deal with that kind of break was to amputate. So they pulled a door off John's cabin, strapped him to it so he wouldn't move too much from the pain, and with a buck saw, cut off his leg just below the knee. They cauterized the wound so he wouldn't bleed to death and left him to heal. Everyone knew that was the end of John Roe Moyle cutting stone for the Salt Lake Temple. Everyone except John. Not long after, John hobbled out to the barn on makeshift crutches, pulled out his shaving horse, and with a draw knife began shaping 2 pieces of wood. He shaped the first to replace his missing calf and carved a slot in the bottom. He shaped the second to replace his missing foot and carved a strut on the top. He inserted the strut into the slot and put a bolt through both pieces, giving him a hinged ankle. That way, not only could he walk without crutches, he could climb a ladder. He finished it off with a leather sleeve to attach this wooden leg to his thigh and began practicing until, after several weeks, he felt confident that he could again walk the 22 miles. On the chosen day, he got out of bed just before 2 a.m., strapped on his wooden leg, and got dressed. His wife, blurry-eyed, sat up and exclaimed, "And what are you doing?" John replied, "I've not been released from me calling." And he gave her a kiss and walked out the door, heading for the temple block to build Zion with his talents. There were many stonemasons at work on the Salt Lake Temple, each with a large wooden mallet in one hand and a steel chisel in the other. But only one stonemason had wood at hand and at foot. That was John Roe Moyle.
I shoulder my full burden, I carry my full load. No matter how hard the trial, no matter how long the road, I offer no excuses. I give all I have to give. I labor in my calling. This is the creed by which I live. Flesh and bone, steel and stone, wood at hand and foot, heart and mind so aligned, the end is understood. Day or night, left or right, my path is always known. To the end that God's my friend, my life is set in stone. While others are still sleeping, I travel my well-worn trail to be where I am wanted each morning without fail. I chisel sacred granite, I finish its speckled face, and I leave my marks upon it forever in this sacred place. Flesh and bone, steel and stone, wood at hand and foot, heart and mind so aligned, the end is understood. Day or night, left or right, my path is always known. To the end that God's my friend, my life is set in stone. And when the bucksaw took my flesh and bone below the knee, and others thought it surely meant the end, to me it only meant another way had to be made, to take that walk and make that climb again. Flesh and bone, steel and stone, wood at hand and foot, heart and mind so aligned, the end is understood. Day or night, left or right, my path is always known. To the end that God's my friend, my life is set in stone.